Welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. This week we have all-round good news as Channel's television begins another streak of awards. A big congratulations to my colleague Ayola Kasim, our environment correspondent, for winning the prize for TV reporting. But also big this year is the personal award given to our big boss himself, the chairman, chief executive officer of Channel's television, Mr. John Momo. Over the weekend, Mr. Momo received the Planet Africa Award for Excellence in Leadership in faraway Canada. And as the year has not ended, we're still expecting more awards, individual and collective. But to the program now, it's been 25 years since the Berlin Wall that divided East and West Germany came down. The wall was built in 1961 to stop people fleeing from communist East Germany to the West. German Chancellor Angela Merkel was one of those who grew up in East Germany. She joined other officials to lay wreaths of roses in the remaining sections of the wall. Germans made huge celebrations of the fall of the wall, which happened on November 9, 1989, with various street parties happening all across the German capital. 8,000 helium balloons were released into the night sky on Sunday. The white balloons perched on 3.6-meter poles to match the height of the wall and running as long as 15 kilometers, released one by one to symbolize the disappearance of the wall. Shortly after, Chancellor Angela Merkel, alongside President Joachim Gauck and other officials, placed a rose in the remaining section of the wall. At the opening of a new information center about the wall, Ms. Merkel said it was easy to forget what had happened, and it was important to remember it. Ms. Merkel, who grew up in East Germany, was a 35-year-old scientist when she got her first taste of freedom on November 9, 1989.
Tag der Scham und der Schande. Wie sollte aus diesem Datum jemals der Tag des Glücks?
She said the wall coming down meant that people have the power to shape their destiny and make things better, noting that people in Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, and in many other places around the world should feel heartened by the example of the wall's abrupt disappearance. But change, even for the better, has been a little difficult to get used to. Stefan Rubenhardt, who lived in West Berlin, said he still finds it peculiar going into the east, because when the wall came down, that part of the city was swallowed by construction. At least 138 people were killed trying to flee to West Berlin, and many ended up in jail for their attempts to escape. Back at the Brandenburg Gate, a minute of silence was observed in their memory. Pope Francis, after the recital of the traditional Angelus prayer on Sunday, focused on the anniversary. He urged prayers that all such walls around the world should come down. He said bridges should be built instead of walls to bring the world together. But back in 1989, it was not just the Berlin Wall that came down. It was also communist regimes across Eastern Europe which collapsed, heralding the end of the Cold War. The wall, on the other hand, has become a potent symbol of that war. During the time the wall was up, Henry Kissinger was U.S. Secretary of State. Recently, he spoke with our friends at the Voice of America, who asked him, given all the tension and insecurities the world is experiencing today, is he disappointed in the way the Cold War turned out?
Yes, I'm sad that we are in the situation in which we find ourselves. I believe Russia has to be an integral part of any international system. During the Cold War, I resisted what I thought were Soviet pressures, but I think the time, and I thought then, and I think even more now, that it is important to find a way to bring Russia and the other countries into a cooperative relationship.
And it seems that this is increasingly difficult to do now, because we have NATO people saying that every day we have something. The Russian planes are flying over Europe and so forth.
The issue is we need to make a fundamental decision. Ukraine has every right to be a free country, but the other countries have to decide whether they want to deal with Ukraine as a strategic outpost or as a bridge between themselves. If Ukraine is thought of as an outpost by either side, it will lead to deep antagonism with the other side. On the other hand, if there is a commitment to a cooperative support of an independent Ukraine, and Ukraine becomes a bridge rather than an outpost, then we can avoid the danger of the Cold War.
In similar interviews like the one with the U.S. Council on Foreign Affairs, Mr. Kissinger explained that the war was inevitable because of what Soviet leader Joseph Stalin was saying at the time. To understand this, we need to go back a little in history to understand the Cold War.
The Cold War began after the end of World War II, following the defeat of the Axis powers, being Germany, Italy, Japan, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria, by the Allies, being the US, Britain, France, the USSR, Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, China, Denmark, Greece, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Poland, South Africa and Yugoslavia. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin claimed the territory he had liberated from Germany as part of the Soviet Empire. Under his instructions, communist parties took control of each country's government, cut off all communication with the West, and became official Soviet satellite states. Unwilling to launch war against Stalin, then US President Harry Truman promised the US would help nations at risk of being overtaken by communists. The idea was to prevent Stalin from gaining control of Greece and Turkey. Stalin tried to gain control of Berlin, a city that had been divided among the victors of the Second World War. Before now, he had already taken over East Germany and severed it from the West as part of his post-war conquest. Hoping to claim the entire capital located within East Germany, Stalin blockaded the city in the hope that the Allies would be forced to abandon their sectors in Berlin. Instead, the US airlifted massive amounts of supplies to West Berlin, defeating Stalin's objective. However, West Berlin became an island of democracy within the communist East Germany. While West Germany set up a capitalist society and experienced rapid economic growth, the opposite was the case in the East. The Soviets shipped valuable assets back to the Soviet Union. The economy slowed and individual freedom was restricted. Hundreds left the East, making their way to the West for a better life. The wall was erected in the dead of the night of August 12, 1961, in order to stop the migrations.
Some portions of the wall can be seen and touched at the museum in Washington, D.C. It's the museum, not the museum. And when we come back after the break, the U.S.-led coalition remains relentless in its mission to quash ISIS in Iraq. Please join us again.